All right. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome the Talmidim of Kita Ches in Cheder Menachem here in Los Angeles, as well as Talmidim of Kita Ches, and in those places where Talmidim of Kita Zayin have joined them as well, the Talmidim of Kita Zayin, in those Chadorim, Yeshivas, schools across the country that are joining us for the first webinar of a series of webinars that take place for older Talmidim in Chadorim and Yeshivas of the Chabad Meistes. I'd like to thank Rabbi Leibel Cohen for all of his effort organizing and arranging the actual webinars. And it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our speaker today, a Yid who has had the tremendous chus that for quite a few years he merited to be what's called in Hebrew a Mishamish B'Kodesh, someone who is able to help out in the home of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. And he merited many personal interactions with the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin over the course of those years and beyond, and who spent much time in close proximity to the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. Rabbi Mendel Notik is our guest, and we've heard from him here in Cheder in the past, and his recollections and his experiences and stories are fascinating, and I'm sure that you will find them to be fascinating as well. Our focus today, in particular, is on his interactions as well as his experiences spending Tishrei with the Rebbe, and in Tishrei itself, the weeks leading up to the Yomim Noraim and Rosh HaShana Yom Kippur in particular. As time is limited, and Rabbi Notik's experiences are vast, he can really go on and on for hours and hours for bringing with us about his experiences. However, due to the time constraints, that will be the area of focus today. Without further ado, it's my honor to introduce to you Rabbi Mendel Notik.
Thank you very much. Okay, so a few things. First of all, I'm delighted to be here. I was here once before, like the Rabbi mentioned. And since we're a little bit limited in time, I'll go a little bit quicker. I also have a cold. I hope that I have the proper energy that I usually like to have when I talk about 770 and the Rebbe and stuff like that. And I know the Rabbi mentioned that if you get antsy, you're not forced to be. I hope I'll be successful enough to keep you engaged and interested, because unlike many speakers that you maybe had here in the past, I'm not a shliach, unfortunately. I'm not a rabbi. He said rabbi, but anyone interrupt. I'm just Mendel Notik. I just work for a living, but I do have a koch in the Rebbe's stuff, always had. And I hope to be able to share with you some of this stuff. Now, this kind of a lecture, I want to mention one more time Rabbi Leibel Cohen, who put in just for this particular one, because kind of was the last minute. I was coming here for a wedding. So I said, you know what? If I'm going to come to Los Angeles, I also want to try to contribute my time in a useful way, besides the little lechaims at the wedding. So it was kind of the last minute, also with school just starting all around everywhere, and including in the school he's running in New York, and he's trying to do all this stuff, and we had to put together an outline or an idea what I'm going to try to talk about, because Tishrei in 770, you can talk about it literally for days, not just hours. But obviously we don't have that kind of time, and so we're trying to condense it, so we had to come up with certain ideas. Then he wants to make matching slides and pictures to correspond to what I'm saying. So he put in a tremendous amount of time. I also want to say thank you to the Rabbi for having me for the second time. And Rabbi Shalom, who goes by the name of Heidingsfeld, but I gave him a new name because now is the Chodesh of Melech Basada. So why is he hiding? Let the Rabbi show his hand. Come on. There's no need to hide. From now we'll call you Melech Basada. So that's Reb Shalom Melech Basada. Can everyone remember that? Okay. Now, let's get a little bit more serious. So, my name is Mendel Notik. I live in Seattle, Washington now. I made a bracha a minute ago. And when I was a bach in 770, I had the schus and the privilege that first I was a little bit involved in 770. I'll give a very short introduction about myself so you understand that I'm a little bit different than the average person, shliach, rabbi, mashpia that comes here, or you teach us. Unfortunately, when I was your age or older, I guess I was 15 or 16, I didn't really have what you call in Yiddish. Look at me, not at the screen. Yo, look at me. Why are you looking at the screen? I'm right here. So I didn't have what you call in Yiddish sitzfleisch. How many know what sitzfleisch is? Okay. Rabbi, you need to explain what sitzfleisch is. But it means that you don't have really what it takes to sit and be a big masmid. But that's unfortunate. But fortunately, at least in those days, there was no such concepts that if you don't have what it takes to sit and learn 18-hour days, I don't know, you go work, you do this or that. So in those days, I got myself involved with everything that was going on in 770, which meant organizing the setup for the Fabrengens. It was called Vad HaMesader. It actually had a name. The people who do the Seder, who organized the tables and everything. To the point where, when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, whatever, at some point I was actually setting up the mics for the Rebbe. And sometimes in the middle of the Fabrengen, I'd go bring a fax to the Rebbe when nobody even knew what a fax was. Actually, we should mention the cover of the HaShana. Rabbi Kunin had sent a fax one time in the middle of the Fabrengen, and I brought it down to the Rebbe in the middle of the Fabrengen, and the Rebbe actually talked about it. And the Rebbe said that these days things travel very fast. The Rebbe used the word of Tilim, Ad Mehera Yoretz Dvorei. And I think the Rebbe was talking about opening additional Moisdes, if I remember right, but I can't say for sure. And Rabbi Kunin called us upstairs in the communication room where we used to broadcast the Fabrengens from, which hopefully you guys have seen in person in 770, or maybe it's in pictures. And he said, go to Rabbi Kvinsky's office. Rabbi Kvinsky already had a fax at the time, so I ran up there. Rabbi Kvinsky gave me the key, blah, blah, blah. Ran up there, got the fax, and then brought it down to Rabbi Kvinsky. Rabbi Gon, I don't remember what it was, climbed all the way to the Rebbe's table. And the Rebbe looked at it for a split of a second. I think Rabbi Kvinsky said there that whatever the Rebbe was saying in the Fabrengen, he's going to do it already. And the Rebbe said that there already came idea, it's a Hebrew word actually, that the announcement came, and the knowledge that, these days, information travels very fast. The Rebbe was referring to a fax machine. So I kind of became a machi in 770, and also those were the early days of Mivtzoyim. Not all the Mivtzoyim that exist today even existed. The Rebbe came up with the Mivtzoyim one at a time. And the 12 psukim that you know now also didn't come up in one time, if I remember right. So I think I still have an envelope that Tzira Gudas Chabad in New York has printed that didn't have all the Mivtzoyim on it, if you can imagine that. I don't know if anybody even has that. I think I was involved in printing it. Anyways, I got myself involved in everything that goes on in 770. Not as much going in mitzvah tanks as much as preparing mitzvah tanks. That was the first year of mitzvah tanks was Lamed Dalet, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe Lamed Hey. So I used to be more preparing the mitzvah tanks, the brochures and everything needed in the mitzvah tanks, and gassing up the tanks and maybe preparing sandwiches, whatever it was. They also used to sell forms. So I got involved in everything, unfortunately, besides really learning 18 nowadays. That's the real truth. But anyways, as time moved on, I was involved pretty much, like I said, in everything going on in 770. I don't know if we have pictures here, but, from certain dignitaries that would come to the Rebbe, or Rebbes that came to visit the Rebbe, where they were called certain Yechidus that were a little bit more open to the public. Sometimes it was completely open to the public. Let's say one time I remember the Belzer Rebbe came. He was a lot younger than the Rebbe. He was actually almost my age, a little bit older. And he came to visit the Rebbe. So the whole Yechidus and his Hasidim and some Lubavitchers got to go into the Rebbe's room. So I was there also. So partially to keep Seder a little bit, and I helped prepare the room ahead of time, things like that. Eventually, I was asked to help work for the Rebbetzin. The Rebbetzin always has like a bocher, you can call it a shtickle liaison between 770 and the Rebbetzin. Like if the Rebbetzin wants to send something to 770, get something from 770, or certain things that she needs for herself, or help in the house. We're not talking about cleaning or stuff like that, but we can get into it now. That's another conversation. Maybe I'll fly out with the Shem more for Chabad Shvat, then we can have a whole spiel about the Rebbetzin, where is my forte, so to speak, and that's more where I'm used to speaking about. But in any case, then at some point I was asked to help the Rebbetzin, and as I say, the rest is history. So I was lucky for some years I worked for the Rebbetzin. Help with Pesach, help with Sukkot, help daily, and sometimes go with the Rebbetzin on trips she wanted to go, or to even watch her car when she was going to a doctor's appointment, and on and on and on. Anyways, this Tisha with the Rebbe, I was asked literally a few days ago. I hope to do a half decent job. I was involved in everything that was going on in Tishrei, a little bit maybe different than some other people who I know have spoken here in the past. I know Rabbi Leibel Koff has spoken here one time, and I watched his whole presentation. It was great, and it helped me a lot. But I was also involved in certain things behind the scenes. So maybe when the whole crowd only can see certain things, I knew certain things, maybe also what was happening, kind of in home, and I was able to connect certain things, which I hope to go into some of the certain little things soon. So you could say I had a view, maybe with binoculars, that some other people didn't really have, because of where I happened to be lucky to be, that I was always the macher and involved in everything that was going on. Who knows what a macher is with a show of hands? What's going on over here? Okay, so pay attention really good. A macher, you're looking at one right now. That's a macher. A macher in Yiddish means a maker, somebody who make things happen. Move tables, paint, take down the roof. By the way, how many of you have been to 770? Okay, now we're talking. Okay, how many want to go as soon as they can again? No, wake up. I don't see all the hands. Who doesn't want to be going to 770 for this part of this Tishrei? Everybody wants to, so raise your hands. Okay. Now, I was involved in building half of the shul, because when I came in the summer, and the Zman starts kind of Cheshvan in Yeshiva. And I was 15 years old at the time. The Zman started Cheshvan, so they were still building the last section of 770. So if you can imagine, I helped build the last section of the shul. And therefore, I was also able to catch a really good place where I could see everything that's going on. From mostly Hakafas is the one we always wanted to have a really, really good place. But generally, I was able to be able to see pretty much everything that was going on in 770. Years later, I actually ended up sleeping in 770. And there's many pictures that were actually taken from a little cutout in the room where they used to broadcast on the phone, the Verbringens. And also Rabbi J.J. Hecht used to sit there on the big Verbringens in the weekdays to translate the Verbringens. So he had a little cutout window. So that was actually my dorm room, which is about the size of less than 2 tables put together, but it was good enough those days. So I was able literally, even if something was going on very early or very late, or if I couldn't see everything that's going on downstairs, I was able to be sometimes in my room and actually see the entire 770 literally from my room. It's almost like a little security window. In some pictures you can see it, mostly with Rabbi J.J. Hecht. Anyways, we're done with that. Okay. Tishrei in 770, Tishrei with the Rebbe. Like I said before, that'll take forever and ever, but I'm going to try to go in a little bit in the atmosphere and less in details, more in the atmosphere. So, how should I put it? Most young Bochim from around the world, as well as their parents, but Bochim, now you have to understand, the stuff I'm telling you is recollections that start about 45 years ago. So that was like Tafshin Lamed Daled. That year specifically, a large amount of Bochim from around the world, but mostly from Israel and also from Europe. I'm from Europe. I'm born in Paris, France. Came to 770 for what was Shnas Hakel. At some point, you guys will explain that. And basically, most of them ended up staying in yeshivas here, and they never went back, and they're still here. But that year came a huge amount, and that was also the year that the 770 was added. The last section that you see now, that almost doubled 770 downstairs in size. But generally speaking, parents and Bochim who wanted to go either to visit or to stay or whatever, they had to work really, really, really hard to come up with the finances and the permission from the Anhala of the yeshivas that are behaving the good students, because otherwise, who's going to take them into yeshiva? So the sacrifice, I know we use now the word Mesiras Nefesh very easily, but let's use a simple word. The devotion and the energy and the money it took those days to travel is not like today. Today, an airline ticket from here to New York is what a person makes in a couple of days working. Those days, it was what a person makes in a month or 2 months, especially if it was from Israel. So the people who come for Tishrei, it was very, very, very hard for them. I guess it's showing a picture of people arriving. I can't see, it's a little small. And we should really appreciate how much Lubavitchers from everywhere in the world were so desiring and was so excited to go to the Rebbe for Tishrei, that the parents and the kids, some kids worked in certain little things. I know how I came to 770. My parents didn't have 2 pennies to scratch together. I actually sold HaShanas. I hope everybody knows what that is, right? I actually sold 2 suitcases of HaShanas to a big fancy shul in Paris. And at that point, we used to live next to Lubavitch Yeshiva in Brunois. So I sold 2 suitcases of HaShanas, and that's how I was able to finance my own ticket. And it was a one-way ticket, thank God, and I never went back since, by the way. So that was like 45 years ago. In any case, it was a lot of work for the parents and the kids. You can see guests arriving, and the whole Kanai, the whole 770 suddenly changed. People are talking about where they're going to stay. So Chapa Platz, to catch a place. Where are you going to try to have a place by Tkias? Where are you going to have a place? The main focuses was like Tkias. Maftir, you can hear or you can't hear. You can see. Most of the time you can't hear unless you're very close. But you know, Tkias everybody wants to see, and it's a whole procedure in Tkias itself. There's a lot of components to it. Simchas Torah was the biggest one, because there was the first Sakaf and the second, and the Psukim, there was a whole to do. By the way, when you guys look at pictures, you see the Rebbe and the Bima, right? Now, that only came into place that year, and the Rebbe wasn't easily going to agree to it. At some point, it was so pushing 770, because the crowds kept getting bigger. It was so pushing 770 that I remember, I know it's hard to believe, where when the Rebbe was going out and people were running either to catch the Tilim on the Rebbe's table that they had put ahead of time, or it was so pushy that actually the Rebbe got pushed. I know it's a hard thing to believe, but 770 was getting so full, so tight. So at some point, the Gaboim had to work really hard to convince the Rebbe that the Rebbe was going to be on the Bima. Originally, Bima was going to be only for Tishrei. And after Tishrei, it's going to get dismantled or put in storage. I actually helped build it, but I think we already figured that out, right? And at the end, I don't remember the fine details, but I managed to convince the Rebbe that it's a big crowd, everybody wants to see the Rebbe, and there is pushing and noise. And actually, one thing about the Rebbe that I remember very vividly on numerous occasions, the Rebbe can't take Bilti Seder, the opposite of Seder, and noise. On more than one occasion, but one I was actually standing there and I could visualize it. And we're talking, I think I was maybe still a boch. I'm already married 4 years, so that's even before that, I think, maybe after, but I don't remember. I remember explicitly at one kosher bracha, the first minute, when the Rebbe finishes Havdalah, becomes very noisy. And because everybody wants to jump up to catch a place, they want to be first, or maybe they want to go home, or maybe not, that they want to get done with kosher bracha, and then they're going to stand around for hours and watch the singing and the kosher bracha and everything that goes on. So the first minute becomes very noisy. On one occasion, for sure, I remember because I was there, the Rebbe said that if the noise, or I forgot the words the Rebbe was going to continue, the Rebbe said, I'm going to leave the becher, with all kosher bracha, leave the becher, I think he said the wine, and like you can do whatever you want. The Rebbe got really upset. Anyways, what I'm saying is, so the 70 was tight, and especially if you wanted to be closer to the Rebbe to be able to see or hear and stuff like that. So eventually the bima was left there the whole time. Going to a little bit into Tishrei. So one of the biggest events on Rosh HaShana, you basically have, in short, you have Tkiyas, which is very important on every level, but in 770, again, remember that I'm not a mashpia or a rabbi and I don't give lectures, I'm just telling stories. But I think we can all understand on a very basic level, especially if you're reading, and I hope you are, that Tkiyas by all the Rebbes, and all the tzaddikim of the world, but all the Rebbes was a very, very special time. It has to do with kind of fighting some elements in Shamayim, shall we say. Sometimes the Tkiyas went easier, so we believe that the Rebbe is having an easy time in Shamayim. Sometimes it goes a little harder, and even we as people in 770, when the Tkiyas weren't going easy, and we can see the Rebbe is like fighting, so to speak, a fight in Himmel, even we kind of were getting emotional, and we felt bad, I guess is one way to express it, and we were and a little bit understanding. We can't say we understand the Rebbe's world, but we understand that something is going on. But as far as the most simple events, people tried singing kafas from everywhere. I'm sorry, Tkiyas, but also people wanted to hear the psukim before a kafas. You can hear almost to the whole shul because it's so quiet when the Rebbe starts the Tkiyas, which I'll explain in a second, that you can hear a pin drop literally. But also, there's also people want to hear, like the Rebbe sings a little bit sometimes, and the Rebbe also cries under the talis. So the pushing next to the bima was so intense that part of the shul got emptied. So I remember when I got married and had a little boy, my boy started to bring him for tkiyas. I used to stand by the Oren Kodesh, which is across from the bima. The bima is kind of not in the middle, but kind of, further away from the Oren Kodesh. And there was so much room there suddenly. I mean, in Simchas Torah, you cannot put a pin there. Or at some davening, where the Rebbe davens Vov Tishrei, where the Rebbe is yotzet for his mother, which is in the middle, in the middle of Tishrei. But everyone pushed closer to the bima so they can hear and see and be more almost like feel the energy and everything that's going on the bima. But the back almost became empty. And he's with my son on my shoulders, and he was able to see the whole spiel. I'm also tall, but he was on my shoulders, and we're able to even move around. Suddenly, it became like a little bit empty. But in any case, the main things that I remember from Tkiyas Shofar is, first of all, the whole Rosh HaShana, the Rebbe's face and the Rebbe's look almost changed. It becomes very, very serious. Almost a little bit scary for us, I'm talking about the younger guys, but I guess for the older ones maybe also. When the Rebbe would come down Rosh HaShana, I think in my earlier years, that is, I think that the Rebbe would maybe even carry some of the pan, but I could have a mistake on that. I don't think so. But a pan is little notes that people ask for bracha, mostly write just the name. The Rebbe they put it in big bags, they tie it up with ropes. I remember when I first came as a little boy, so to speak, I was only 15 when I came to 77, a little bit older than you guys. I think there used to be 1 or 2 bags, then it became 3 bags. I think then it became 4 bags, because so many people from all over the world would write to the Rebbe to ask the Rebbe to take it to the oil with him, and the Rebbe would tie up the bags, and the Rebbe's secretaries came with these big paper bags that can barely make their way into 770, and the Rebbe would put it next to his standard. They put a little table there. When the Rebbe went down from the bima to Tkiyas, the Rebbe would take his siddur, and I think 1 or 2 of the shofars with him, and the Rebbe's secretaries would carry the bags. It was like a whole to-do. But the more important thing is they put it on the bima where the center bima, the bima where you use Kriyas Torah, and the thing you can never forget, or the scary part, is how the Rebbe would suddenly, before anything started with Tkiyas, but that was the beginning of the Seder of the Tkiyas, where the Rebbe would grab the talis and almost cover all the bags. And if you can just think of this, if you think of your name being inside of it, and the Rebbe had seen all of them, the Rebbe knows the people, and the Rebbe took them by hand the day before, on Erev Rosh Hashanah, everyone had the chance to pass. I don't know if they're showing the pictures now, but I can't see on the little screen. Everyone had the chance to pass and give the Rebbe the pan, actually hand the Rebbe the pan, and those are in the bag. So if you think about it, here you have the Rebbe, not only our Rebbe, but the head of Klal Yisrael, but our Rebbe, actually, davening, I guess, for lack of a better expression, it really gives you a jitter to think that the Rebbe is actually, your name is in the paper that's under the Rebbe's talis. The Rebbe was there usually covered for a while. When the Rebbe picked up his talis and he folded it a little bit, getting ready more to be able to do the shofar, the Rebbe almost looked like completely different than the few minutes before. Very, very serious, and sometimes you can see that the Rebbe had tears in his eyes. It was a very, very moving, very scary moment. All at that time, part of 770, especially around the bima, everyone is trying to stay there so they can hear everything. Like I said before, it's swaying like waves, like a black wave. It goes back and forth because everybody's trying to push to be able to hear and then hold on to the place. Now, Tkiyas, I would say, was maybe around 12 o'clock. Some of these people came to catch the place at 8 a.m. Can you imagine how much it meant to them, but at the same time, how exhausted they were? And by the way, when Tkiyas was finished, all these people pushing out the beam, we're talking about hundreds of bachim, hardly anyone with a talis that just wouldn't be able to. The bachim kind of had the event cornered, so to speak. They were wet completely. You can wring out the clothes, even though the air conditioning was at a freezing level, because they were like in a can of sardines, for lack of a better expression. So that was the first thing. Then there was the psukim. The psukim you can hear everywhere. The Rebbe had a very, very special tune with the psukim. Unfortunately, I can't say that anyone has a recording that I know of. By the way, just in parentheses, I want to give a big thank you to Jam, where a lot of the pictures and everything comes from them, but generally they deserve a big thank you. I also want to encourage everybody here, especially as you get a little bit older, if you want to understand who we are, what we are, and the Rebbe's live in 770, you have to watch some of these videos. Some of them are very short clips, some are longer ones. You don't have to watch an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours of bringing. You watch certain clips. You will understand what's going on. You get a picture in your head, and you get connected to the Rebbe like in no other ways. I have a little grandson who lives with me in Seattle. He happens to be very smart. Since he's like 2 years old, he watches these little videos, and the stuff he learns. At 2 years old, now he's like 2.5. A few days ago, I was watching with him, and there was a singing of, I think, Kiono Amecha, which I used to sing in 770 also. But that's a weekday, it was a weekday recording. So I'm trying to teach him the word Lubavitch. For a 2-year-old, the word Lubavitch is a very hard word to say. I mean, he knows who Lakenu, but there's a lot of hard words there. But I want to teach him, I said, this is a song, they sing by the Rebbe. And then slowly I'm trying to introduce him to the word Lubavitch. So he tells me, yeah, but the Rebbe in Lubavitch, right? That's what he told me. Imagine the impact it had on him. But the craziest story, I'm trying to encourage you people to pay attention to the videos of Jam. What you can learn there is a real jam. Last Shabbos, there is a new book that my friend Elkanah, you should get a little plug here, Elkanah Shmotkin sent me in English. I don't read a lot of stuff in English. Plus, most of the stories, I already read them numerous times, or I know the people, or I know when it happened, or I know who it happened with. But in any case, he sent me a gift. What is it called, the new one in English? Huh? One by One, yeah, Stories of the Rebbe. So my little grandkid tells me, says, Zaidi, read me a story. But it's not for his age. What story am I going to read for? I have to make up a story. So I said, Ari, this is not for you. He says, yeah, it's Rebbe stories, but it's not for his age or anything. So I asked him, how do you know it's Rebbe stories? Listen to this. Because there's no picture of the Rebbe. The whole book doesn't have one picture of the Rebbe. So I asked him, how do you know it's Rebbe stories? He turns back the cover to the back of the book. He shows me the little logo of Jam. He says, yeah, it's Rebbe stories. He doesn't speak fluently yet. It says, it's Rebbe stories. We were left in shock. What I'm saying is, please, you can hear people like me talk for 100 years. It does not compare to watching a little bit of stuff on Jam. They have a lot of stuff, and really, you should take the time to watch that. In any case, the psukim could be, going back to the Keshefer, the psukim could be heard the whole 770, thank God, no matter where you are. It was very quiet, super quiet, and you can do the psukim. The Rebbe had a special tune. I was just saying, it's not recorded by anyone. I want to start rolling a little bit quicker because I think I'm using a lot of time, and wow. How many people are really ready to sit here for a few hours instead of recess or lunch? You don't look at them, just look at me. I need more hands up. Okay. All right, now we're getting there. I'll keep you entertained. Okay. One of the highlights, I would say, in a moment that no one would want to miss, is after the Rebbe took back the shofars. So the Rebbe only blows the main shofars, the one you make a brach and everything. And the rest of them are blown by other people that are also on the beam, and they blow in the middle of Shemini Esrei, the quiet Shemini Esrei, and then the Chazor Sashatz, and then the ones after in Kilokenu and all of that. The Rebbe only blows what they call the Tkiyas Rumet, the main ones. I think I'm not mixing up the terms. In any case, then the Rebbe took, his siddur and everything else, and he's going down and going back to his place on the bima. When the Rebbe gets to the bima, I don't know if it's a hanhaga that other Rebbes also had, or it's something to the Rebbe, I don't know that, and somebody who can help me, but either way, after the Rebbe puts down his siddur and whatever it is, on the bima, on his bima that is, and let's call it the platform, where the Rebbe davens in the Mizrach, after the Rebbe puts everything down, the Rebbe suddenly turns around, in a very quick motion, and kind of, for lack of a better expression, scans the crowd. That you can never forget in 100 years, because you feel that you're like almost connecting with the Rebbe's eyes, almost in a way like when the Rebbe said the L'chaim or the Farbrengens, where you can see. But that takes place for so many hours, every person can actually see that the Rebbe is saying L'chaim to him, because sometimes no one is around you, and you're holding up the little L'chaim. The Rebbe is saying L'chaim too. There's not 100 hands. Here, there's thousands of people, but it's so quick, and I'm not even sure. I know for sure that I don't know the Ruchnius meaning of it, but I think the Rebbe is looking at the people that's my own explanation, by the way. I'm going to give a lot of explanations that are my explanation. They're not Torah from Sinai, they're Torah's Lakshan. They're just my own explanation, where I feel about it, where I see it. I'm not saying that's the pshat and that's the reason. And for sure, I don't have the Remez and the Drush. My pshat. I think the Rebbe is connecting to the people he loves, to the people he was just mighty in Tkiyas Shofar, because we all yaitze about the Rebbe's brachas and Tkiyas, which is a mitzvah d'oraisa. So this is what I think it is. I'm sure in Kabbalah and places like that, which completely not my cup of tea, I'm not into that. There is explanations why it's done. And again, I don't know if other Rebbes did it, but with the Rebbe, up on the Bima, it was a real quick spin. The Rebbe went like this, like literally like he scanned the crowd. It wasn't like this. It was like, and went back to Stender. And that moment you can never forget. It was like a connection, just a very internal connection. And at that one, for the people to be able to see, most of the time I was closer to the front, so I could see the crowd, because I was closer to the Rebbe's Bima. And the people were like jumping in the air just for the split of a second. So they kept jumping so they wouldn't miss the opportunity. So the whole 770 was going like this, like thousands of people all the way down, because they're trying to, and a lot of parents were holding the kids on the shoulders, kids who don't make noise. So that's basically about Kiyas. I want to start to move a little quicker. Some of the other things still going on in 770. Every main Yontif, but I think it's only 2 times a year, Pesach and Rosh HaShana. I think maybe later there was also for other events, the Rebbe would give out what they call a Michtav Klali, a general letter. The letter was not addressed to Lubavitchers, it was addressed to Klal Yisrael. And as you get older, I'm sure you're going to learn some of them. I don't know if there's a picture on the screen. He was going to, Rabbi Cohen was going to try to have a picture of it, but in any case, I'm just here to tell you that I know from first hand, both from being involved in some of the organizations, the Vadim, to do the Rebbe's letters. The Rebbe put in enormous amounts of time. We're talking many, many hours that the Rebbe would write the letter. And he went through many, many, many additions. And then the Rebbe would write ha'ores, footnotes on the bottom. In 770, used to be the Rosh Yeshiva in my days, whose name was Rabbi Mendel, Kol Shalom. And when the letter came out, there were certain times in the yeshiva where he would try to teach it. He was a big guy who wrote books and everything. And I think it's fair to say that he was probably older than the Rebbe. But in any case, he would try to teach the letter. It would take him hours and hours and hours. And every word and every letter in it, he would be able to give an explanation, what the Rebbe meant possibly, and so forth and so forth. Sometimes when he learned it, or other people learned it, they had questions, they would write to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would answer. I think in some occasions the Rebbe would answer the questions that were asked at the Farbrengen, because the Rebbe assumed, for lack of a better word, that other people have the same question as well. This is actually a picture of Rebbe Mendel upstairs in the which is enough to fill many of these shelves. But the one that the Rebbe wrote and worked super hard was what they call the Rashi Siches. And I want to say a little story that was privy to versus maybe other people. So I'm telling you firsthand here. So I don't know if that's a Kute Siches there, but I guess now it's like it's almost 40 volumes, right? So originally these were called the Rashi Siches. The Rebbe would speak on Shabbos, and then they would write it up, and it became a whole back and forth, and the Rebbe would fix it. But the main fixing, which is called the main Hagod, the main editing that the Rebbe used to do, so they used to type it on 10, 20 pages, and the people who typed it, we're not talking about somebody who knows how to type quick. We're talking the big Geonim in Lubavitch across the country that would cooperate and collaborate, and they would prepare it to go into the Rebbe the first time. And it was double or triple spaced lines, so the Rebbe can write everything he wants to fix in between. Then the Rebbe would write new ha'ores on the bottom, or something the Rebbe took from somewhere else. Sometimes the Rebbe doesn't want to look up the page or whatever, or even spend the time writing the page on the Gemara, the page in Zohar. The Rebbe says, Urei Zohar ala Mokim. The Rebbe says, look in the Zohar on this location. Sometimes the Rebbe referred to Zohar that they couldn't even find, and so forth and so forth. But basically what I'm trying to imply here is when you get older, I want you to understand how much time the Rebbe put in writing the Sichos as well as everything else, but for sure the Rashi Sichos. But before that, I want to explain the concept from what I know and see, which has a little personal touch, because a lot of people can stand here and talk to you about the Rebbe's precious time and all of that. It's a little bit different when you're hearing it from me as follows. One of the early times that the Rebbe said something about how precious his time is actually involves kids. And I wish we had more time. I can go in long conversation on this. By the way, but not by the way, the Rebbe spent an enormous amount of time actually with kids, and mostly kids before Bar Mitzvah, in hundreds of events. Now, this same Rebbe, to explain to you, when you see the Rebbe at the rally and Rabbi J.J. Echti speaking and teaching a new song of We Want Mashiach Now and all of that, this same Rebbe, every second of his time is accounted, not because I know so, or not because I could imagine, because the Rebbe wouldn't waste time. Because the Rebbe, from the few things the Rebbe ever said indirectly about himself, is the fact how precious time is to the Rebbe himself. There's a famous story that the Rebbe went twice to visit Gan Yisrael, upstate New York. One of the times, on the way there was a flat tire. The second time, when the pressured the Rebbe should take a little vacation, which the Rebbe never took any vacations, but he agreed to go again, I guess, visit camp, to be yoitze, the mitzvah of vacation, or what in Lubavitch in Russian is called dacha. So the Rebbe said something to the tune. It says, I didn't make up yet the time that I lost last time. In other words, the first trip when he had a flat tire. Now, I think everyone who's 5 years old and older, but for sure you guys could understand, that the Rebbe wasn't sitting there and waiting for the tire to be fixed. He for sure wasn't playing with an iPhone because he didn't even have one yet, or a tablet or anything of the sort. But I think what the Rebbe is saying is that maybe his concentration, and this is my pshat, and how deep in thought and how deep busy the Rebbe is in his mind, the second maybe it happened, and maybe the Rebbe had to go out of the car. I don't remember if the Rebbe had to leave the car, or it maybe interrupted the Rebbe's avoider, and the Rebbe felt that he lost time, and he felt he can't make up the time. This same Rebbe would be hours at the rally or like Boima parade for the kids. And when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, I want to tell you this. This is all introduction, tell you the following. By the way, I do want to mention a little story about the Rebbetzin. Now, us being careful with the Rebbe's time, I think we could all understand, right? Sometimes people want to walk over when the Rebbe comes from home to 770. Somebody wants to walk over to ask for a bracha. It could be for somebody who's super sick, God forbid, and needs a for shleimus that is so urgent. The Bachim or whatever, and the Rebbe's secretaries, they always try not to let people interrupt the Rebbe, because otherwise it will be an endless story, kind of. The Rebbe never get to 770 to go home or whatever. Notwithstanding that, we understand how precious the Rebbetzin herself. I'm a witness to numerous occasions how careful and precious the Rebbetzin took the Rebbe's time, and how you say was mischashev. Consider it. Value the Rebbe's time, and how considerate was the Rebbe's time. Get this. On Purim, the Rebbe would come home for the Seder of Purim. Purim, I tried not to be home when the Rebbe is home. Why? The Rebbe is home very, very little. When the Rebbe comes to 770, he's usually there from 10 a.m. to midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning, or sometimes till 8 in the morning the next day if there's yichidas. Within that period of time, whether it's 10 hours or 18 hours or 20 hours, the Rebbe goes home one time for a shtickle meal. That meal doesn't have a name because it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, supper, it's every name you want, right? On Purim, the Rebbe, I guess in my words, was so pressured to get back to 770 to continue, I guess, what the Rebbe's world of HaShana is to the Verbringen, that the Rebbe's whole Sudas Purim was so quick, I can't even describe to you. And I wasn't standing there. I can just hear the Rebbetzin talking. By the way, when I was home, they would talk in Russian. The Rebbe and the Rebbetzin would talk in Russian when I was home because I don't understand Russian. But on Purim, so I generally try never to be home. I try never to be home when the Rebbe is home because I don't want to take away HaShana from those few minutes that the Rebbe is with the Rebbetzin for a stranger to be in the house. So sometimes the Rebbe comes in, or we can hear he comes in or whatever. I just wave goodbye or say goodnight, and I run to the back door. And that could be early in the evening. It could be 7 p.m. Sometimes it's at midnight. Sometimes I would sit in Shmuz with the Rebbetzin, and I was there till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, sometimes to 1 o'clock in the morning. But then we hear the Rebbe's door. He's like kind of slams the door in the front, I guess, to a little bit announce he's coming. And when the Rebbe comes in, I just say good night, good night and goodbye, and I'll call you tomorrow or whatever. Or if you need something, call me, and I run out through the back door. There's many of those stories. Maybe, like I said, I can come back and and we can get in more about the Rebbetzin. But in any case, the Rebbetzin was so careful with the Rebbe's time, and Purim, for some reason, the Rebbe would put on a new hat. They say that some people, you send it as Shalach Manos as a gift to the Rebbe, would send a hat. Now, the Rebbe's hats are about this big. The Rebbetzin is a short, very short little lady. She's about this height. Imagine the Rebbetzin schlepping down from the upstairs floor 6 or 8 hats, so the Rebbe wouldn't have to go upstairs to try on the hats. The Rebbetzin, I guess I need to stay focused on the camera. The Rebbetzin would put it on. The chairs are still in the house. If you ever get to go through the whole house, sometimes the house is open where you can go through the whole house, not just in the front. The Rebbetzin, on the corners of the chairs, there was like little pointy, little amudim or little pointy things. The Rebbetzin was put it, in my recollection, I think on each one there was a hat. I guess at some point the Rebbe tried it on real quick, and decided one of them was good. And then at Fabring, the Rebbe showed up with a new hat. But imagine this, how precious even the Rebbetzin was mischashev, was careful with the Rebbe's time. This is all introduction to the following. After Lamed Ches, which is 78, where the Rebbe had a heart attack on Simchas Torah, on Shmini Atzeres, downstairs in 770, and then another one, unfortunately, upstairs in the room, but I don't want to go into that now. After that, that was the years I worked for the Rebbetzin. After, for weeks and months, first of all, the Rebbe stayed in 770. I think you guys all know Rosh Chodesh Kislev, right? We celebrate because the first time the Rebbe was well enough to go home. Until then, that's 6 weeks. The Rebbe was stuck, so to speak, in 770, where they created a hospital room for the Rebbe. When the Rebbe finally went home, either way, so every day, the main doctor of the Rebbe, his name was Dr. Ira Weiss from Chicago. And he would call every day the Rebbetzin at 7 p.m. Unless he was in New York visiting, then he would come in person meet with the Rebbetzin. But otherwise, he would get reports from all the doctors that were 24/7 next to the Rebbe's room, what they call Gan Eden Atachten. Sometimes bigger doctors came from world-renowned doctors. But in any case, he would call the Rebbetzin and give a report, and also ask the Rebbetzin certain things. The Rebbetzin also, by the way, talking about how careful the Rebbetzin was with money, and I don't want to deviate, but the Rebbetzin would always want to call him back, because those days it was very expensive, and every minute was like $1. Talking on the phone, the Rebbetzin was very, very quick with him. And every single day, I wasn't always there, but whenever I was there, the Rebbetzin always tells him, I'll call you back, because he's paying for the phone call. The Rebbetzin feels bad. But in any case, many times I answer the phone. In any case, so this one, the first question he would always ask, this time the Rebbetzin was sitting by the phone, she answered the phone. I remember it like it just happened now. I see it in front of my eyes. And his first question always was, Dr. Weiss to the Rebbetzin, did the Rebbe sleep or rest anything last night? And the Rebbetzin is already prepared for the question. So she's like almost answering, because also she's trying to save time on the phone. The Rebbetzin is almost answering it before you even ask the question. And she says, no, not at all. I remember exactly what she said. I am here to tell you, I don't know what the Rebbe does. He can be sitting alone with the Rabbeim and with Eliyahu Navi and everything else. I only know what our fleshik eyes, our simple eyes see, and the connection we see certain things. The night before, the Rebbe took one yellow manila envelope that I happened to bring down, because I happened to be around 770 and I was involved a little bit in all these organizations that were preparing the siches. That was the only thing the Rebbe took home. This big manila envelope with the main fixing of the Rosh Sicha. Then it goes to another 10 times, it goes back and forth to the Rebbe. It's retyped, it's fixed, all the typos are fixed, and the Rebbe adds stuff. It's a whole long procedure of hours and hours. Many other times when the Rebbe went home, the Rebbe would take a big bag with letters that the Rebbe had to sign or go over at the final, before it gets sent to the person. So there was like a little paper clip with the person's letter, the Rebbe's letter answering to the person's envelope, so to make sure they got the address right, and the Rebbe's envelope. So it was a whole little stack of papers, and the Rebbe would take this like homework at home. I'm here to tell you a little secret. In the Rebbe's house, there was a room that was, the Rebbetzin called it the Weiße Zimmer, but we refer to it as the Oval Office. Why? Because it was actually white and oval. The Rebbe had a huge table there, I would say at least the length of 2 tables put together. The Rebbe had so many letters that he tried answering and getting to. It was this high covered the entire table. I think it was a little corner where the Rebbe could sit and write. So generally, the Rebbe would take, I guess some of these he takes home, and then maybe the next day we can see pictures of the Rebbe many times where the Rebbe comes back with bags of the letters that he signed and they're finished. Sometimes the Rebbe fixes something, adds something. The next day when the Rebbe came back after he took this manila envelope, again, the Rebbe could have been learning all night, and I'm sure he was, and doing other things. But from my eyes, the next day when the Rebbe came back at 10 o'clock, he only brought back this single envelope and gave it to like his secretary to give it to the people working in it. The next night when the doctor asked the Rebbetzin if the Rebbe rested at all or slept at all, the night before said, no, not at all. So I just want you to know, when you get much older, or now when you hear a Rashi Sikha, the love that we should have for that, besides the Chochmah that's there, that everyone in the world today already knows, not just Lubavitch. In Israel, they give out, I think, 250,000 copies free. They put it out in the shuls. As soon as Shabbos comes in, there's not one to be found on the tables. All over the world, people know that the biggest Chochmah in the world is the Rebbe's Rashi Sichos. But in any case, I'm just here to say how much thankful I have to be to the Rebbe that he left us this for him and the Rashi Sichos. But I also want you to know the Rebbe spent so much time. I think we got to start moving very, very quick. I spent a lot of time in explaining on the Rebbe's time. The Rebbe loved the guest. The Rebbe took very big interest. That set up for them. There is pictures with you can see the Rebbe giving the leftover cake of the Farbrengen, which everybody would love to have a little crumb of, right? Because the Rebbe made the bracha and the whole tray of cake. The Rebbe would give it to Rabbi Ruslavsky, who was running Dachnas Sorchim, for the guests, and talking about the guests all had set up a whole system of shiurim and miftzayim. It was a whole setup. It was like a whole organization, a government. I guess that's a picture of where they're sitting and eating. But in 770, here's I think Rabbi Yaroslavsky giving out, I think, the lekach. And eventually there were thousands of guests who would come from around the world. Imagine that the population of Crown Heights would become 2, 3, 4 times the amount of time. This is actually where they're learning. Rabbi, the one standing there like a soldier or sergeant, is Rabbi Vilamovsky of Shalom. He used to organize all the shiurim. And how much time do I have still? Huh? 2 minutes? Okay. So I barely touched the surface. Let me see just something that maybe you will love more than maybe other things here. Just a little anecdote has to do with me directly. So on Erev Yom Kippur, the Rebbe would give out lekach. Later years, the Rebbe would also give out on Sukkot. We can't go into all the details, but one year, I think I was already married, or the first year I was married, and I didn't want to go after Mincha to get lekach because I didn't want to take away a second of the Rebbe's time, and I knew that the Rebbe would barely have any time to go home to eat if a bunch of people are going to line up to take lekach Erev Yom Kippur after Mincha. And after Mincha, the Rebbe would first give a bracha to everyone downstairs, and then kind of run home a little bit for a very quick meal. But I really wanted to have lekach that year. I don't know why, but I didn't have the chutzpah to go to ask for lekach. So I was kind of standing by the entrance of 770, a little bit on the side where the Rebbe goes into his room, just to see the Rebbe. And the Rebbe must have read my mind. As he was coming back from Mincha from downstairs. The Rebbe reached into his pocket, took out a nickel, and gave it to me. To no one else. There was a few other people standing there. And for years and years, I stuck it into a wallet of mine. And I must have had it for 20 more years. And unfortunately, I guess I was in Zoich at some point. The whole wallet got stolen. But anyways, maybe the nickel made it to the right place. We can go on and on and on. But since it's younger kids, I think I would be remiss. Just one little other story that's me passing by the Rebbe, as you can tell. That's lekach, right? I can't see from here. I think it's lekach. The panim, when the Rebbe would take the pan, the little note with your name before Yom Kippur, was also kind of the same situation, but a lot faster. One little story that I remember, because we're talking about younger kids. I remember one time, literally it was 11 o'clock at night, not in the daytime, where a family came with a little girl that needed some big yeshua and bracha, and they were begging that they want to go into the Rebbe for 1 minute. Apparently there was a medical issue. And they explained to her that it's impossible, or they explained to the family. But the Rebbe was aware, because the Rebbe secretaries told the Rebbe, apparently, that they're trying to go in, and more than likely they're going to interrupt the Rebbe on the way out, or the Rebbe is going to go home, because the Rebbe was going home around that time then. So the Rebbe took the time of his love for kids. The future of Klal Yisrael is kids. And as the Rebbetzin told one boy, that his name is Holtzman, I'm sure you've heard the story before, where he asked the Rebbetzin, he says, I've been here many times. Have you guys ever heard the story? He lives in Israel. I forgot his first name suddenly. His father used to work for the Rebbetzin many years ago, and then when they were little kids, every time they came to America from Belgium, they'd go visit the Rebbetzin. So this little boy asked the Rebbetzin, I know him, he's a little bit younger than me, and he says, can I ask you something? She says, yeah. He says, I've been here many times, I don't see any kids. Like, what's going on over here? Can you imagine asking that to Rebbetzin? So his mom is like trying to kick him under the table to quiet him down, but the Rebbetzin didn't take it the wrong way or anything. So the Rebbetzin asked him, have you been to 770? He said, yeah. Have you been there lots of times? She says, yeah. Says, the Rebbetzin says, all those kids, all the mentions, she said, all the people you see, they're not just kids, but he was asking about kids. The Rebbetzin said, all those people you see there, they're our kids. I think there's no better point to finish than this. But to go back to that little girl, since I think the secretaries explained to the Rebbe that they're going to stop the Rebbe on the way out, so they were trying to come up with some other idea or something. So the Rebbe took a siddur, and actually the Rebbe signed his name in the siddur, which is a very, very, very rare occasion for the Rebbe to do. And the Rebbe sent, either he gave it on his way out, I can't remember the second, or gave it to the secretaries to give it to her with all the Rebbe's best wishes. Anyways, we have barely touched anything, barely ditched page 1. I'd be honored and delighted to come back maybe closer to the Rebbetzin, because that's more my thing, and we can maybe do a little bit of a bigger event. To everybody, and a good gebench to you. I hope you enjoyed.
Please remain quiet in your seats. Thank you, Rabbi Notik.
Mendel Notik.
Thank you, Mendel Notik.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Thank you. No, it's with the video is fine. Lahab is kino. Okay. One thing I wanted to mention about the tkiyas is, again, it's my explanation. I'm not saying it's the right explanation. But the Rebbe had, it's known to the Rebbe, the tichel from the Alter Rebbe was called the red tichel, but over the years, washing it or whatever, it wasn't really red anymore. That the Rebbe used to wear by tkiyas. I guess the Rebbe's way of connecting to the Rebbes before him. Like, I think, Chasanim or the Kalas, they want to have something from the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's in the shirt and the tichel, whatever it is. And the Rebbe also would put on a scarf that the Rebbetzin had made every single year a new one, because on the second day of Rosh HaShana, it's a question if it's one Yom Tov or two Yom Tov, it's called Sfeika D'Yoma, and that's why we make a Shechiyonu the night before we have a pomegranate or something on the table. But the Rebbe, I guess, went to a higher level. He wanted to have a new baguette Chodesh, a new baguette, so the Rebbetzin would have a scarf made every single year. And then the Rebbe brought it back home. It could be seen in some pictures when the Rebbe leaves also Yom Kippur. The Rebbe wore on Yom Kippur as well, I'm almost certain, but for sure on Motzei Rosh Hashanah, you can see in some pictures where you can see the white scarf is kind of a little bit hiding. I was privileged for the Rebbetzin to give me one of them 40 Baruch Hashem, 40 years ago. The Rebbetzin gave me to cover my kala, who the Rebbetzin also knew him before I married her, because she stayed at a family in Kon Heights that was involved also with the Rebbetzin. But in any case, so the Rebbetzin gave me to cover as a gift. She gave it to me as a gift to cover my kala. And happens to be that I came yesterday for a wedding, so I brought it with me. So I'll give you the schus to look at it. And if you want, the kids could touch it as well. So make sure that your hands are clean, not sweaty or anything, if you're going to touch it. There's only most probably 2 or 3 people in the world that have it. I hardly ever bring it with me. It always sits in a bank, so don't try to come to my house. I see some of you are thinking you're going to come to my house and break into my safes. Not going to happen. It sits in a bank, and I hardly ever travel with that, but I happen to be very friendly with Rabbi Meir Shmukler. And as an exception, I brought it in for him. I have it here. You'll be able to actually see it if you want to touch it or whatever. That's all up to you. So that was used actually yesterday to cover the kala. So here you can touch something that is straight from the Rebbe on Rosh Hashanah. By the way, this is a side effect. That's a shirt from the Rebbe that Chasanim sometimes wear. So that's been worn by a lot of Chassanim. The shirt I'm fairly easy with because I have more than one. So I'm easier to travel with this. But I also keep it in the bank. I have one in the bank in Seattle where I live, and I have one in the bank in New York. So I have it everywhere. Or not everywhere. I have it in two places we might need it. So that's not. Where's the other hidden compartment? What? How much what stuff? Oh, I have enough.
How much stuff is
good question. I have enough to make a whole museum, and not one thing I ever asked for. Stuff the Rebbe gave me. Good question. And if I try to collect, I must probably be able to cover all these walls. But maybe one day we'll do it, and we'll hire the CIA to watch it. This you can tell is a different color. One piece is different color. Can you tell? One section. So this is one time, whatever, there was a ripped garment, a baggage of the Rebbe, which in the Chumash refers to at the bottom of the Kohen Gadol, is referred to the big day Kodesh Shilbash. The Kohen Gadol's Gadim are holy Gadim, so referred to Bad Kodesh. So this is only one little section. I also let Chassanim use it, so I wanted to be able to make enough yarmulkes, so only one section is the Rebbe's material here. So that I also happen to have. Because I bought it for the wedding. Actually, I don't travel with that. I will travel with one in case, somebody wants to say, keep it tilling with it or whatever it is. And here is the tichel. So again, this is just a big piece of material, pure silk. And when you take out the little threads from both sides, it becomes like a scarf. So that was the Rebbe used this as a bag of chodesh because of the Shiloh of Shechiyanu. And the Rebbe gave this to me like 40 years ago. So you see, you take up a little piece of material, it becomes like a scarf, and the Rebbe would kind of roll it up and tuck it in with the other tichel of the Alter Rebbe. So you want them to touch it, see it, whatever. That's all up to you.
Those that would like to on the way out will line up, and you can have the opportunity.
Whatever you want.
Someone would like to be able to.
Just can't go away from my eyes. It needs to be under my eyes for full time.
Video camera.
Anyways, if the people around the country are still alive, it was my pleasure. Next time we should try to set us up for 3 hours. Maybe we'll have an intermission. We'll have a little snack and we'll get back into it. Everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Notik. Thank you, boys. Please wait in your seats for a moment. Okay. If you would, first of all, you have 20 minutes. Obviously, you'll be called in at 11:26. If you'd like to walk out, you can go out that way. Those that would like to have the schus, an opportunity to handle a beged that they never wore Rosh HaShana, please
slowly, yeah.
Get online right over here.
Just slowly, please.
But I would suggest, if you're a bar mitzvah buffer, given the kedusha of what you're holding now, put on your hat, your jacket, and think to yourself when you're going to be handling this beged that they never wore Rosh Hashanah. Think to yourself a tefillah or something that you would want to say while you're holding it. Okay? So get your hat and jacket on, and you'll have that. Okay?
Put your hat and jacket to touch it.
They're convinced that Allah